It's one of the hardest things for women to understand because estrogen configures a different brain. We literally do not know how to interact with a committed state of mind. And testosterone configures your brain for a committed state of mind. And the moment you commit, it literally screens out everything it thinks is irrelevant.
Welcome to Bridging Connections with Bryan Reeves. There we go. We're off and running. Welcome to Bridging Connections, the podcast formerly known as Men This Way. I am your host, Bryan Reeves, Bryan with a Y, Reeves, and alongside me as co-host is my lifelong childhood best friend of over 40 years, Tate Aaron. Tate, welcome to your show. As always. Today we have a very, very special guest, Alison Armstrong. A brilliant woman whose work I first came across around 15 years ago when I first started actively learning about how to do relationships well. I was 36 and I was finally beginning to really get that I actually sucked at relationships. Like I was just starting to realize that there were secrets to love and intimacy that should never be secrets. Like someone should have let me in on those secrets. And Alison Armstrong was one of the first teachers who began to actually invite me in. Alison is a visionary educator and one of the foremost voices in understanding the dynamics between men and women. Her groundbreaking work has transformed how we view relationships, masculinity, and femininity, offering profound insights into the human experience. So, whether you're looking to strengthen your approach and skills in relationship, whether you're curious about your own developmental journey, or you're just fascinated by what makes us tick, this is going to be a good conversation. Right, Tate? Right? Alison, is going to be amazing. I'm so excited for this. So let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Alison Armstrong. So honored to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for what you guys are up to. Seriously,
Yeah, thank you.
So needed. So very needed.
Thank you. Well, before we started recording, Tate pointed out this observation that I think he and I lived without for many years, which is we have a lot of olders, but not a lot of elders. And, we've been starving. I mean, this podcast was born out of the longing to connect with elder wisdom in the world. And so to be able to speak with you, Alison, you've been in just on the journey of life. You figured some shit out. I don't know if you would necessarily frame it that way, but we're just truly honored to have you here to sit at the feet of an elder. We're grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. So
let's start here. As I shared in my intro, I started listening to your work 15 years ago or so. So that I'm 50, so that puts me, mid 30s, mid late 30s. You were the first person, Alison, that I ever really heard say, "I love men." Living in a world where we men do get kind of beat up, especially in this modern age. We've been, a lot of us grew up with moms that were angry at men, and understandably, right? Understandably. And I'd never really heard anyone, especially not a teacher, really embrace the heart of men. It was a kind of a revelation. So I'm just curious. Let's start here. Like, tell us about how your own journey to understanding and loving men unfolded for you.
Oh, goodness. Okay, it would help me if I knew. Have you read or listened to The Queen's Code?
I've read The Keys to the Kingdom.
Okay.
I don't remember. I may have listened to The Queen's Code years ago, but The Keys to the Kingdom, definitely.
Okay, so Keys of the Kingdom is the prequel to The Queen's Code. And The Queen's Code is the book that I knew I had to write, and I didn't know how, that had us 30 years ago this month start our workshops for women called Celebrating Men, Satisfying Women. I wanted to teach women what I had found out about men that was astonishing to me. I wanted to teach them so they could teach me how to teach them. So in the struggle to teach them, that I would learn how to teach them so that I could learn how to write the book that would convey all this miraculous information that I had discovered about men are so not who women think they are, and so much good news. But I wanted to convey it in a way that wouldn't just give women information, because little did I know, when I started studying men in 1991, in the background, it wasn't conscious, in the background was know thy enemy. And as I was listening very carefully to two men that these days we would call me a coach, I thought of me as their committed listener. They were three men, entrepreneurs, different ages, different stages in life and in their businesses, all single. And because I wasn't involved with them romantically, I didn't need anything from them. I could be curious about them. I could care about what they cared about. I could focus on what's one of my highest values. I could focus on empowering them by the way that I interacted with them. And so in 1991, when I found out that I was a frog farmer, which is part of the first chapter of the Queen's Code, one of the main characters finds out she's a frog farmer. And in other words, instead of turning frogs into princes, I was turning princes into frogs. Now, at the time that I found that out, I was 30 years old, and I was sure that men were, well, I'm going to say jerks, because I didn't clear ahead of time how much I could swear.
It all goes here. It's all welcome here.
It all goes well. I thought men were assholes.
Yes, yes, that's the word.
And I was sure that men were con men, that they were charming and wonderful in the beginning, and then after they knew they'd caught you, they would change. And I decided that what they changed into, which I didn't like at all, was who they really were. And the rest was just a front. And when my colleague was called a frog farmer, and with this strong implication, she was bringing out the worst in men, I got so excited. I mean, I hadn't been involved in transformation since I was 19 years old, and I knew I could transform myself. I had tried to change men. It did not work. And it was just, some women really hate my work. And you'll see like responses to interviews and stuff like that on YouTube. Why is it all up to us? Why do we have to change? Why do we da-da-da-da-da? I was ecstatic because I knew I could change me. So if I'm bringing out the worst in men, that means they're not as bad as I think they are. So how am I bringing out the worst in them so that I can stop? And maybe I'd learned a little bit about bringing out the best in men. That was like this tiny hope that maybe I could become the opposite of what I knew I was in that moment. And I didn't recognize this actually until a few years ago. I have been literally guided from that moment. And how it happens is these questions are pop into my head. What if men are responding to women? And I've learned over the last almost 34 years that the questions are very specific. It's not, how are men responding to women, right? Or men are responding to women. What if men are responding to women? And thank goodness it was that question, because I had nothing to prove. I just became curious. What if? And what if that would illuminate why men that I thought were proven assholes had wives who were happily married to them? Like, so how are they responding to her versus how they're responding to me? And this was the beginning of listening. First thing I had to do is learn to listen to men, which is one of the first things I try to teach to women. If you really want men to reveal, to divulge, to give you the full answer, you have to shut up. And not shut up like, yada, 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 whatever, mansplain, which broke my heart when I first heard that term. No, actually be curious and do what we always say we want men to do. Just listen, right? Just listen, and listen for What's important to him? What's true for him? What's real for him? What matters to him? There's so many better questions to listen with. It's I think one of the most important things that I've done. It's called Lux, and we recorded it 5 years ago. And it's all about one of the few things that we have a say in, and that is, what is the filter? And mostly how human beings automatically filter, we never hear each other. We mostly listen with, is that true for me? Do I agree with that? What do I want to say about that? What do I think about that? And if you want to find out what people are listening with, just pay attention to how they interrupt. Well, what I know about that is this. Well, that's how they were listening. That's not true for me. That's how they were listening. I don't agree at all. That's how they were listening. People reveal, because the conversation they're really having with themselves brings up something that they've got to interrupt with, right? So I had to learn to not interrupt. And we call it waiting for the well. We teach women to, only ask questions you're willing to wait for the answer for. Just only. If it's not that important to you that you'd wait maybe days for the answer, don't ask. And wait, don't reframe, don't give options, wait for it. I'm precise, and I think like an engineer, and I'm compelled to quantify. Most men come in at about 18 seconds.
Unless a response to a question?
Yes, after asking the question. 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. Most women will interrupt you after giving you a question. They'll interrupt and restate the question maybe 5 seconds. And because they don't know. They don't know what I found out, right? That the opposite of what women believe about men, that you're non-committal, you're naturally committal. So I ask you the question, the first thing you're doing is committing to the question, or realizing I can't answer that right now. You can't commit to the question. Commitment takes time. It takes a lot of time. Ladies, it takes a lot of time. And think about your title, Bridging Connections. Oh my gosh, so many things. So we got to wait. That's a whole lesson, just waiting. So I had to learn to wait. And then,
I want to just, Alison, I just want to speak to that for a moment, because that's something that, my wife and I were together almost 10 years. And it's a theme that has definitely come up. And we've talked about, the well that you speak of. Like when she asks me a question, I take her question seriously. I don't just take it unseriously. I take it seriously. I want to make sure that the answer I give has integrity, and which requires that I go internal for a time to really explore. And especially if she's asking me like feeling questions, like she'll often ask me, are you excited for XYZ? And I have to like sit, okay, well, am I excited? Like I have to check in. Am I really excited? Well, why would I be excited? Why wouldn't I be excited? Like I have to really explore the answer. And I think what happens for a lot of men is we get frustrated because the patience isn't there for our response. Right. So after a time, I'm just conditioned to be like, look, you don't want my answer anyway, so I don't give a shit. It's a tragic spiral, downward spiral into disconnection, really, in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why should I commit to your question when you're not even committed to your question? Right. And the same thing happens. Right. You'll have a sense of congruency that women don't know. So, for example, I'm really tired. Could you put the kids to bed? Yeah, I'd do that for you. Oh, thank you so much. And then he observes that she's not going to bed. She says she's tired, but she's finishing the dishes. She says she's tired, but she put a load of laundry in. She said she's tired, and now she turned on the TV. I guess tired doesn't mean to her what it means to me. Right. So the next time she says, I'm tired, would you put your kids to bed? He goes, no, why should I? Right. You don't do what a tired person would do. Well, now, like in our Understanding Women course, when you find out that women can't fall asleep until they've quieted their environment, till all the dishes are done, till this is straightened, till that's this, like we actually have to quiet our environment, to quiet our minds to go to sleep. And I had to learn from men when I started teaching courses for men. It was time to go for a break, but I wasn't finished saying what I needed to say. I learned I could stop and say, it's lunchtime. We're going to put a pin in it and stop right here. Let's go to lunch like I said we would. The meal break is at. And I could keep my word for when the breaks were and just stop talking in the middle of what I was doing. And I never got a complaint from any man. You didn't finish what you were saying. They just got up and went to lunch. And it's such a different way of being, a different way of thinking. You can stop in the middle of something, transition to the next thing that has to be done, and come back to it. And there's things you can't come back to, right? Honey, I got to tell you something. Not now. That you don't mean to be mean. You know this requires this ultimate focus, and you're just about to the thing. And if you walk away, you won't recover it. Like, to trust that you know you. Is this a good time?
Yeah.
No. Is this a good time? For what? Because you're committed. My husband, I had to work it out. If I say, can I ask a quick question? He didn't take his eyes off of the race that he was watching, the motorcycle racing. Can I watch you? Can I ask you a quick question? He'd go, sure. And then I would wait for him to turn to me. And after a while, he'd go, what? And he's still looking at the television. And I finally realized he couldn't commit to a quick question. He needed to know what the quick question was. And if I said it was a quick question, it had to be a quick question. No background. It had to be chicken or fish. And then you go, chicken. So it's one of the hardest things for women to understand, because estrogen configures a different brain. We literally do not know how to interact with a committed state of mind. And testosterone configures your brain for a committed state of mind. And the moment you commit, it literally screens out everything it thinks is irrelevant. Yeah. And I heard about this. I picked up on this. I didn't get it until I got older and my hormones were shifting and testosterone was taking over. And I was trying to clear a bunch of emails before I ended for the evening. After a while, I became aware of it. Felt like did a helicopter land in my office? Like it like whap, whap, whap. It was like this pressure, whap, 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 whap against my ear. And I finally turned and looked, and my husband was talking. And I said, I can see that you're talking, but I can't hear you. He goes, single focus.
You get it, finally.
Exactly, you get it. And women don't know that your brain does that. They're like, he just tunes me out. No, he doesn't. Yeah. His brain does that for him the moment he commits. But it's also why we love it when you pay attention to us. Right. When you're focused on paying attention to us, it's like straight tequila. Do you know? It's the nectar of the gods. We don't get that kind of attention from women ever. There's always some part of our environment that is pulling our attention away.
Which makes it all the more painful when we're not giving our attention. Because if it's nectar of the gods when we're tuned in, then it must be pretty painful when we're not.
Yeah.
Well, yes, and how come I say this is because of so many women I interact with. We have a program called Smart Singles. It's co-ed, but it's mostly women. And so many women what they say is, I want a man who'll make me his first priority. And I tell them, no, you don't. Yeah, probably. Men have such enormous capacities that if you are their first priority, they will drive you nuts. Yeah. Because we do want that undivided attention, but not always. We just want it when we want it. And that's why we have to learn to ask for it. And there's the asking for has to be very specific because you're so impact oriented. To use the word performance oriented, and we change. You give you guys another 10 years and your brains are going to be rewiring, and you'll have a whole new perspective on an open state of mind. It's not just something that happens when you're at play, right? When you're at play, you have no results to produce. That's when we fall in love with you because you're the most available to connect, right?
Yeah.
But we admire you from what you accomplish from being focused. It's really the beginning of the disconnect, right? So in this bridging connections, the beginning of the disconnect is how we seek safety or security. And most men, most of the time, will use the word secure. I know I'm secure. I feel secure when, and it'll have to do with accomplishment, productivity, respect, right? Something right when we started talking today that I literally have never connected this until you guys were talking. Like, wait a second, security, men aren't just seeking security and productivity. They're also seeking security in that one person. Tate, it was when you said that intimate relationship with one person, one of the pillars. Oh my gosh. And what has a man experienced being secure in his relationship? And like everything I've learned about you, just like all lined up in answer to that question. And it's one of the reasons why one of the things that makes a woman the right person to marry is that you have evidence, you believe, and you have evidence that you can make her happy. Happy wife, happy life. If your wife is happy, that is a sense of security in the relationship that you have everything invested in. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
just
So
to clarify, we were having some conversation before we started recording. So our listeners may not know what you're referencing, but we were talking about the 5 pillars of a thriving man that Tate and I have conceived of over the last number of years. And one of those pillars being intimacy, and intimacy with self as a foundation for intimacy with other. And, it is interesting, this word safety, security. Most men won't use the word safe when it comes to relationships. Like, I want to feel safe with my partner. They do want that, but we won't typically use that word. Most of us men, we think of the word safe, we're thinking purely physical safety. And of course, I'm physically safe.
if people do anything, I invite you to go to AlisonArmstrong.com and click on the free sample of Understanding Women, because it starts with the fundamental thing from which everything comes, and it's the difference between men and women and safety. And I ask a question, and Tony Robbins picked up on this, but he doesn't do it right. I asked the question of men to he watched the video. So I asked the question of men to think about, when was the last time you had a concern for your physical safety? And then I give them time periods. Like, do you have to go all the way back to being a child? And a really good proportion of the men will raise their hands. Okay, so in your teen years, and then another proportion may raise their hands. And then how many of you it's been in, right? The X many years. By the time I get to in the last year, there might be one man out of 100 men who has his hand up. And there's still men who they can't remember a time that they were concerned for their physical safety. And that the word safe, you apply to physical safety. There is one other place, though, that men use the word safe, not secure. You use the word safe. And I've heard it so many times in the last 34 years. Wow, you're so safe to talk to. She's not safe to talk to. My girlfriend's not safe to talk to. My mother, why would I tell her anything? She's not safe to talk to. That's the only place I hear you use the word safe. Because you don't use safe when you're like, honey, do you feel safe? Are you safe? Are the kids safe? Right? You'll pay attention to it that way. But the point here is that how men cause security, the sense of security is one way to put it is through productivity. And even making one's wife happy is a kind of productivity. I made her happy. And, but women who we're constantly monitoring our physical safety, we're so much weaker than you. It's astonishing. And that's part of the sample I invite people to watch is a measure of that. But we're constantly monitoring our safety. Sometimes we feel safe through productivity, sometimes because we're enough in that space, but mostly we experience safety feeling safe, which is another difference, factually safe versus feeling safe. We feel safe through connectivity, when we feel connected to you. And so for a woman's, from an instinctual standpoint, feeling connected 100% of the time would satisfy. Consciously, what I'm teaching women to do a lot of the time is, first of all, safe is a decision. Instincts will never say we're safe enough. We have to decide, I'm safe enough. Instincts will never say we've had enough connection. We have to think about, okay, how often do I need to connect with my mate? How often do I need to connect? I don't actually need to connect 43 times a day through a text. How often do I need to connect? And, you know, my husband died 5 years ago. I started a new relationship 4 years ago. I was freaking out after a little over a year when I left my home, moved to his part of the world, and I wasn't getting enough attention to get enough connection. And I was freaked out, like this is a bait and switch. What the? And I finally coughed it up. I moved here to see you every day. I need attention every day, undivided attention. Where you're paying attention to me every day. And I was so scary to say it. And God bless him. He goes, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because I didn't live with him. I lived in the backyard. Because so you pick a time because you're busier than I am. And every day I'll come over or you'll come over to Longview and we'll lay down. We'll lay down and we'll hold each other and we can talk and maybe we'll get frisky. Maybe we'll fall asleep, but we'll do it every day, no matter what. Really? Like started to cry. You would give me that? And up until that point, I was so jealous, which that feeling of jealousy requires a sense of possession. I was so jealous of the time he had with his 3 kids because he would schedule something with me and then one of them would say, Dad, do you want to have dinner? Do you want to have lunch? And he would go. He would, I mean, he would tell me, but he's like, hey, Trey asked me to lunch. I'm going to go. And I'd be like, is nothing sacred? Like, so I was like, could I have 3 hours a week? And you'll tell your children that's Allison's time. Well, after he invented laydowns and he kept his word about it, and all I had to do was pick a time and text it to him and he'd show up. All of a sudden I had enough connection. I had enough attention. I had enough connection. I encouraged him to go be with his kids. You know, New Year's Eve. Normally I'd be like so protective. New Year's Eve is my special time to get attention. No, I'm sick. Honey, say yes to any invitation you get to be with your kids and enjoy it. And he texted back, you're the best of the best. And I realized, oh, I can be because I'm full, because I've gotten enough attention.
Yeah, Allison, I'm so thrilled that you're on the Bridging Connections version of our podcast because what you're speaking to is the nuances and the beautiful needs and desires that exist and the beautiful differences that exist between us men and women. I wasn't fortunate enough, like Bryan was, to be introduced to your work 16 years ago. I happened upon you in the social media realm, maybe it was 6 months ago, when you gave this beautiful talk about how men are icebergs. And so what I think would be really interesting is if you could just speak briefly about what you meant by that, and if men are like icebergs, what are women like?
Oh boy. Okay. So men are like icebergs. I think there's two really important parts of that. One is because women ask questions and then interrupt before you can answer, women think men are shallow. They don't know that emotions are not trusted and need to be sorted out before you speak about them. Feelings are mysterious and you have to go hunting for them and figuring out what the heck that feeling is. And then maybe you find a huge feeling like, oh my God, I care about her. The biggest feeling a man can have, the biggest investment of his life he can have, to care. Oh. And then if you say, I care about you, she's like, oh, what the fuck? She doesn't even know what she was just handed. So there's such a depth to men. And when I started studying men in 1991, right, to find out how I was bringing out the worst, honestly, I thought so little of men. I thought it would take 3 to 4 months to learn everything worth knowing about you.
Wow.
Yeah. I wish I was exaggerating. I am not.
Oh,
And
man.
I have never committed to studying men. I've never committed. I've been enraptured. I've been like, oh my gosh, right? For all these years, I pull a string and I keep pulling, and there's something else and something else and something else. And like just even what you guys said earlier, and I'm like, security?
Yeah.
Oh, secure in relationship. There's so many ways that women let men know you're not succeeding here. We don't tell you the right things. Oh, I love it when you do that. Oh, gosh, that's one of the things I really admire about you. Or can I tell you something I really like about you? Oh, I like that you did that. Oh my gosh, I just fell in love with you all over again. We don't keep it, right? We don't keep feeding you. And we also, one of the biggest things, talk about bridging connections, women are so worried about being desired. So worried about being desired. We are clueless that men need to feel desired. We're clueless about it. And okay, I'll out us. So Dan will lead his way down the hall to somewhere. And we've been sharing the same house for the last couple of months in preparation of sharing an RV for 3 months.
Ooh,
and
that's a big move.
And he'll be walking down the hall and I'll reach out and rub his bottom. I'll pick one cheek and I'll rub his bottom. And he says, thank you. And it's just,
great.
Yes. And it's, women don't know. Women don't know that you want to know you're attractive to her. That hello, you sexy beast. Really? And when we used to do our live workshops and panels of men, we talked about, there was one question about being treated like a sex object. And one man was like, how do I get that? To a woman, that's the most horrifying thing in the world. I want to be that. Could you treat me like a sex object? We don't get it. So, okay, now I started somewhere, but there's so much. There's this, I said there were 2 parts that are important. The second part of it, the first part being how, oh my gosh, you're so deep. And I swear your feelings or emotions are way more intense than women, including love. It's so much more intense for men. But it's all below the surface. You're playing it cool. Because you're warriors and you're not going to reveal what can be used against you. You're built that way. It's instinct. It's the default is to conceal everything. And except what you don't care about. You can talk about what you don't care about till the cows come home. But the other thing that's like an iceberg, it looks like this.
Shoulders up to your ears.
Shoulders up to your ears.
Frozen.
Well, it's not
Contracted.
frozen. It's not frozen. I learned this because I started bioidentical hormone therapy, and my receptor sites sucked up testosterone way beyond the levels a woman should have. And someone did something that ticked me off, and my body felt like an atomic bomb. I thought I could blow up the entire valley. And I was like, no wonder men are proud of having a grip on their emotions. Ah! And it had me get a whole bunch of people together and talk to men about anger. And all these men lined up to come to the microphone to talk about anger. And this is what they would describe as anger is a Tasmanian devil. And I have it in the trash can, and I'm sitting on top of the trash can trying to keep him in there as best I can. But what we see, what women just see is, right? That is the tip of the iceberg of how huge the emotion of anger can be in a man.
Yeah.
Well, flip that over. If you haven't seen it, Tate, on YouTube, search Alison Armstrong Rage Monster. And you'll see me enact the experience of being in the grips of a rage monster, which as a woman is the most terrifying thing that can happen to us. We're literally 99.9% cut off from our own spirit, from our own connection to God, to the eternal. And it's the most unsafe we can ever be, is in the grip of the rage monster. And we say terrible things. We can be completely shut down, and then a man goes, "What's wrong with you now?" Spew the most terrible things, and it's out of our control. And we're terrified about, I'm destroying my marriage right now, and I can't stop it. Well, I found out, and this wasn't that long ago, that men are afraid of the rage monster because you assume it's the tip of the iceberg. It's not. It's the whole iceberg. It doesn't get any worse than that. And it's not bigger than you. It's a 30-foot fire-breathing dragon that can be stopped in its tracks and shrunk down this little squeaking toy monster just by saying, "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings." What? And I teach men, do it prophylactically. All of a sudden she's out of sorts, "Honey, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings." You'll get 3 responses. Number 1, "If you hurt my feelings," confirmation, "I hurt your feelings," apply the cure. Or she might say, "You didn't hurt my feelings. You pissed me off when you disrespected me. I was telling you what I thought about that, and you just cut me off and you disrespected me." Oh, okay. That's a different solution. Or the third possibility is, "Oh, honey, I'm just cranky. It has nothing to do with you, but it's so sweet of you to say that. You get 1,000 points just for reaching out." Which, by the way, for any ladies listening, points, men play for points. You don't even have to be coy about it. You get 100 points for that.
Right.
Dan did something. I said,
Game theory.
I said, you got 1,000 points for that. He goes, "Really? How many points were available?"
That's right.
And then tell him you just achieved level 14. Doesn't even have to mean anything. We just love that we got to the next level. Doesn't have to mean anything. You could say you achieved level Parthenon. Cool. So I'm curious, Alison, what do you think is, because, I can very much relate. I also, over the years, have gotten some angry hate mail from men because when I started really waking up to all of this, to my own, to these so-called relationship secrets, really one of the biggest secrets was how little I knew about relationships. And so I really became an advocate for men taking responsibility for our role in things, right?
Yes.
This whole 50-50 model, I personally, I like the 100-100 model. Like we're both
Yeah.
100% responsible for the relationship. But so I've too over the years at first get some angry, what about her? How dare you, Bryan? Are you anti-men?
Yes.
No, not at all. I'm not at all. I'm not anti myself. I'm a man. I love being a man and I'm for us, but I'm also for us taking responsibility. What I'm curious about is, what that suggests is people are still following a lot of ideas and advice and ways of seeing things that isn't helpful. It's not working. So I'm curious, like what's a common approach to relationships or a common piece of relationship advice that you wish people, maybe women, maybe men, maybe both, but that you just wish people would stop following immediately?
Just one?
Give us two or three, whatever.
We could do a whole show just on that
That's
question.
right. Yeah, no doubt.
Part
I,
two
I,
coming up.
can I pick two?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I had to only pick one, I
Yeah.
would say that the most important thing to avoid, which is the most compelling thing to do, because it gives an illusion of power, an illusion of control, is labeling.
Hmm.
And labeling is a response. We talk about this in the Queen's Code, but labeling is a natural response. It's an expression of objectification, literally. So take a complex being called a human and put a label on them. It's like this coffee mug. It's putting a handle on it. If I can label it, I think I can get a grip on it. This is why, I started in 1991. I was born in 1960. So I was in my teens when Men Are Pigs showed up.
Men are pigs, right? So you're a pig
Yes.
with the example
So
of a label.
men are pigs, men are non-committal, men are emotionally unavailable.
Yeah. Insensitive.
Pardon me?
Well, insensitive. I'm thinking of some of the things that we men are like
Insensitive.
today.
Well,
Yeah.
now there's you're emotionally unintelligent, and the worst of all is narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
We had psychopaths before that, and then narcissists.
Mm-hmm.
Why do people do it? Because it makes us feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's a narcissist. She's a
Right.
narcissist. That's narcissistic behavior. Now I feel in control. It's an
Right.
illusion. We're actually
Right.
less effective the moment we label anything, including ourselves. Oh, behaves that way because I'm too dependent. He behaves that way because I'm too independent. He's that way. He does that because I'm not enough this. We want to define the problem because then we think we can fix it. I call it false cause. Most
Yeah.
people suck at relationships
Mm-hmm.
because they're not solving the real problem.
Yeah.
They're identifying the not problem and spending all their energy solving what it isn't. And that's why nothing changes.
Yeah.
And if I may, could I do something to kind of blow it up for you?
Blow it up. We love blowing stuff up here. Let's say what you got.
Okay. So in the course that I created 5 years ago called Lux, that we did live and made into a online program. It's the only huge production I've ever done. And lights and flash, but it's also really, really fun. It's only 8 hours long. One of the biggest ways that it helped people was for them to find out that they didn't suck at relationships.
Mm-hmm.
They just thought they were doomed. They had so many failed relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I suck at relationships. I'm not good at relationships. Well, talk about a label, a handle that we put on something that makes us ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
So I was creating our workshop about relationships. It was originally called Celebrating Men in Marriage. And I'm a dictionary girl. So I knew this was about relationships, but I wanted the definition of relationships. Now, I went to the dictionary expecting to find a definition that fit with how people interact about relationships. And how people interact about relationships is that there's a thing called a relationship. And like I could say, Bryan, you and I, we met today. You started studying with me many years ago. So you began a relationship with me 15 years ago.
Right,
I get to begin a relationship with you as I contemplated being here today, right?
Yeah.
I just met Tate. We've begun a relationship. So far, so good. We'll see how it develops and how big a thing between us may become. And even as it develops, we'll be able to ascribe qualities to it. It's fun. It's interactive. We're partnering. We seem to be on the same team. And we'll say things about our relationship. Our relationship is rocky. Our relationship is tense. Our relationship is
Distant.
angry. We'll actually so describe your relationship. And two people may even describe their relationship differently. Yeah. But they both believe that they have a relationship. And people are like, oh man, there's too much water under the bridge. We'll never be able to come back from that. It's just, the bad is just too huge. Or we think the opposite, that there's been so much love in this relationship, it can withstand anything. Mm-hmm. Well, do you know what the dictionary said? Mm-mm. And by the way, men wrote the dictionaries. If a woman wants to know what a man means, don't ask another woman what do you mean. Go to a dictionary. Try Webster's, right? Yeah. He said he's busy. I asked him if he wanted to come over, but he said he's busy. Do you think he doesn't like me anymore? What did I do wrong? Well, if you look in the dictionary, it says occupied, previously engaged. Mm-hmm. He's busy. He's already doing something else. But you guys aren't very good at counter offers. You just say you don't do counter offers. But if you wanted to do something, do counter offers. Right. Anyhow, so I go to the dictionary and it says an instance of being related.
Very, very helpful definition. Not at all. I don't even know.
No, it actually is helpful. I kept looking. I kept trying to find the thing. But where's the thing? Uh-huh. And then I realized there is no thing.
Right.
There's no such thing as a relationship. What we think is the past that started a vault somewhere and it's going to save us or doom us, it literally doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anywhere other than in memory, which is no place. And especially, God bless you, men, single focus gives you an inability to maintain the past the way women can.
Well, Alison, you know another word in the dictionary that I spent time looking up not long ago that's relationship oriented is the word connection. And the word connection in the dictionary, what I found over and over, almost said nothing really about emotional intimacy or closeness. Connection was like the connections in a circuit, between two parts of an electrical circuit. The connection between a train and another train, a joint connection. There was your connections like you got drug connections. You got someone you can get drugs from. That's a connection. Like there were all these definitions of connection that in the end had nothing to do. Like if a man, when a lot of times, Tate and I laugh about this a lot. Like we hear the feedback from a woman, I don't feel connected to you. Okay, let me go to the dictionary and figure out what the hell she's talking about. Right. The dictionary will tell us nothing about what she's talking about. Well, because it was written by men and they don't know either.
It was written by men and it was all about productivity, right? All having an impact and producing results.
Tangible thing.
But here's the freedom. What if we suck at relationships, 100% of us, because they don't exist? There's nothing to be successful at. That in truth, the only thing we can impact is this instance of being related.
Mm.
And in this instance, so I think like an engineer, right? I drill down. In this instance of being related, what if there's only 3 things going on? And these are the only 3 things that I can have any control over. One thing that's going on in this instance of being related is, how am I being?
Yeah. How am I being?
Literally, how am I being? Which being has everything to do with what I've embodied. Am I being loving? Am I being caring? Am I being curious? Am I being playful? Am I being snarky? Right? How am I being? We can affect how we're being.
Yeah.
How am I listening? I mentioned this before. What am I listening for? If I'm listening for what's wrong with him, what's wrong with him, what's wrong with him, guess what I'm going to end up with?
Lots of good answers about what's wrong with him.
Exactly. If how I'm being in this moment is curious, and I'm listening for, how is this man sensitive? How is this man honorable? How is this man admirable? How is this man caring? How is this man generous? How is this man? You switch from is he generous to how is he generous? And you practice that in your life, you end up living in a world of generous people. In a rainbow of expressions. And because men don't move from failing to working harder, you guys move from succeeding to playing harder. So if I start with something you're good at, I notice you're really generous with the information that you have about what I'm concerned about. Thank you for that. I'm wondering, would you be willing to also be generous in this way? You may or may not, but I'm not telling you something wrong with you. You're really stingy over here. You're a stingy guy because of the way that you do or do not pay attention to this, right? So that's the second thing we affect. How am I being? How am I listening? And they go together. You change how you're listening, you'll change how you're being. It's like it's a trim tab. You just shift from what is he saying to me to what does he care about? This is how I knew Dan's kids were his highest priority in the first hour of talking to him on the phone. And I was so glad of it. Like, yay. I don't want to be his first priority. When my husband retired, my life became a kind of nightmare. Go do something, right? So then the third thing is, what are we speaking for? What are we speaking for? And unfortunately, most speaking is driven by instinct, just like most listening is. Most speaking is for either we're speaking to conceal, we're speaking to accuse, we're speaking to establish status, we speak for a particular purpose. One of the things we teach in Understanding Women is how much women are speaking so that there's sound. We call it shoo the critters. So that there's sound. It's called shoo the critters. You don't walk into a meadow silent. I mean, I've hiked in Denali National Park, and the naturalist guide, who happened to be my son, but was doing what he was trained to do, was teaching people keep conversation going so that the animal life knows we're coming and they can move out of our way. So we don't surprise them, because people fight is a common response in defense, right? So we actually consider talking to be an obligation. It's a safety duty. And if you won't talk, I have to keep talking. When are you going to do your part? So most women don't know that they're speaking so that there's sound. And it's okay to be quiet.
One of the funniest moments in cinema is in the show Elf. It's so subtle. You know, the Christmas show Elf.
I love that movie.
My wife and I caught this. I'd never seen it before, but there's this one scene where someone's just reading off a list of, like, Santa's list of what all these kids around the world want, to kind of prove that, you know, this is really Santa. He's like reading it on the nightly news. Anyway, and this girl, he's like, Susie, Charity, she wants a Susie Talks a Lot doll. And my wife and I burst into laughing. Susie Talks a Lot. That's the name of the toy that this little girl wants. And the little girl claps like, yay, Susie Talks a Lot. My wife and I,
Um,
that is one of the most cherished moments because, my wife, we joke, she's kind of a chatty Cathy. And now she's a Susie, talks a lot. and,
yeah.
and, and this whole, shooing the
I'll have
critters.
to remember that the next time I see Sylvie.
Don't remember that. Please don't remember that.
Okay. All right.
There's
It's instinctual, and if someone
right.
can't seem to stop talking, if you just reach over and touch your hand, and
Mm.
and
Yeah.
hey, honey, I'm listening.
Yeah.
You're saying,
Yeah.
oh, I can be quiet.
Yeah.
My daughter was, I think she was 9. She had a boyfriend, which meant that she wrote notes that she gave to her best friend, and her best friend gave it to her brother, and the brother gave it to the boy. Right? So they're whose
Yeah.
best friend the boy was. So they had this circle. And then she was terrified. She's like, Mom, I'm going to be with Jason today. What do you mean? Well, we're doing something together. What do I say?
Uh-huh.
And I said, I'll tell you a secret. If you just stand near him and you're happy, everything will be fine. You don't have to say anything. And she goes, really? Like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
just be content to be standing next to him. Everything will be fine.
Mm.
And she looked at me and she goes, I can see that having you as my mother is going to be really helpful.
Mm.
Alison, I want to say too that, and Tate, maybe you've seen this as well, but I saw the Tony Robbins demonstration of the, men, have you felt safe? Women, when have you left? It was, and I saw that was probably, 12, 14, 15 years ago,
He's
around the
still
same
doing
time.
it today. So,
And I will say he did not credit you. And someone
Right.
else later, someone else told me that in the as I was started to share how impactful that was on me. Someone told me that was an Alison Armstrong thing. I want you to know there are people out there advocating for you in that regard. And so I've never forgotten that. But I just want to call out and acknowledge it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I was a little disturbed in the beginning because he took the original Understanding Women video, and I
Yeah.
think actually someone excerpted it and told him what to teach. And
Yeah.
I was involved with him a few years ago and spoke on his stage, and I was there because I'd asked to teach him how to teach what he was teaching without my permission, how to teach it accurately.
Yeah. Mm.
And I went through all these hoops in order to be able to do that, and I was still declined. He wasn't interested in learning how to teach my stuff better. And
Mm.
there's hundreds of thousands of people who've gotten something they need out of what he does. And I've never had to train him, manage him, or pay him. So it's a good thing I'm impact oriented. And the only thing that I have a big gripe with is he collapses a very important way of listening into one that's really two. One is holding the trash for women. A woman needs to just get everything out of her that she has absorbed throughout the day versus venting. And when a woman is emptying her basket, you add nothing. You just are holding the trash and you're adding nothing. And every once in a while you go, anything else? Anything else? And she just, gets to empty. And then she has space, including for parts of your body within hers. Foreplay. It's total foreplay. And the opposite, venting, and men need it even more than women. Venting is when you want to push that stupid truck off the cliff. And you're trying to push it off the cliff. And most women, instead of helping you push it off the cliff, they'll tell you why it's a good truck and you shouldn't push it off the cliff. Or why they probably didn't mean to cut you off on the freeway. Or, honey, why are you yelling at the coach on the football game? He can't even hear you. No, it's this thing that's got to get expressed. And if we get on your team, put our shoulder to it. Yeah, how do you get a driver's license in the first place?
Yeah.
Instead of just arguing with you about he probably didn't mean to cut you off, and you're thinking, why are you being disloyal? Why are you defending them? Again,
I've been in that one a lot with my wife.
Yes.
Well, Alison, I will just say, I know we're coming up on time here. There are 1,000 rabbit holes that I would love to go down with you.
Yep.
And I will just say, we would love to have you back, really to dive deeper into the Queen's Code. I think there's some just brilliance there that we would love to mine and have more conversation with you. But as we wrap up, where could our listeners hear more about your work and learn more about the impact that you're making in the world?
Well, thank you. I would love to do it again. AlisonArmstrong.com is where everything I've created since 2006 lives. The stuff on Audible is all almost 20 years old, and it's evergreen. It's worth listening to. Our online curriculum, I interact with our students in our online curriculum 10 hours a month. I answer questions and look at stuff with them. So that's also at AlisonArmstrong.com. On YouTube, Alison Armstrong videos, there's I think there's 47 videos on there that go through all kinds of things about this that make a difference for people. And if you go to YouTube and just put in Alison Armstrong, I think in 2024, people spent 2.5 million minutes watching videos on YouTube. Wow. So there's
lots of stuff.
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I found out how amazing y'all are, and I've had to tell the world for the last 37 years. And thankfully, we decided to start recording it. So, yeah, there's lots out there.
Well, there's, you know, and this happens from time to time, but there's a whole. Tate's talked about many rabbit holes. One of the things, and I really would, and we'll reach out to your assistant to have you back on, because I want to dive into the developmental stages of men, because that was a revelation. And you know, I'm 50, Tate's 50. I've probably been in the tunnel for the last few years.
Okay, and so I can help with that.
We got to do this again. I think that will be so enlightening for men and women alike. And so we'll reach out to make that happen in a part 2 of this conversation. Let us say goodbye. We'll stop the recording so that, Alison, thank you so much. Don't hang up just yet. Thank you so much. We'll see you in part 2.